When Daniel found the listing online, it felt almost too good to be true. A 3-story Victorian home, sitting quietly at the edge of Ashridge Woods, for less than half its market price. The photos were grainy, the furniture covered in sheets, but the place had character, old, heavy character. What caught his attention most wasn't the photos, though. It was the final line in the description. The house has been empty for 20 years, waiting for someone to come home. He thought it was some poetic touch from a desperate realtor. But when he arrived that afternoon, keys jingling in his pocket, the house didn't feel like it had been waiting, it felt like it had been watching. The driveway was swallowed by fog, the kind that made the world feel smaller. Paint peeled off the siding in long, curling strips. The porch sagged in the middle, and the front door hung slightly open, as if expecting him. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, yet not cold. Dust floated lazily in the air. His footsteps echoed longer than they should have, as if the walls themselves were whispering his arrival to each other. In the living room, he noticed small details: a teacup with dried leaves still in it, a grandfather clock that ticked steadily despite having no pendulum, and faint impressions on the couch cushions, as though someone had just been sitting there. He forced a laugh and blamed it on poor staging. "Guess the realtor didn't clean up," he muttered. But the longer he stayed, the less it felt like a joke. That night, he made a bed on the couch, too tired to unpack. Sometime past 2 in the morning, he woke up to the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and coming from upstairs. He lay frozen, every muscle locked. The creaking steps stopped for a moment, then continued, closer to the top of the stairs. When he finally worked up the courage to sit up, the sound stopped entirely. The house went silent again. The only thing he could hear was the faint ticking of that clock. The next morning, Daniel decided to explore. The second floor was a maze of narrow hallways and slanted ceilings. Most doors opened with a sigh of stale air except one. At the end of the hall stood a door with cracked paint and a rusted handle. When he tried to open it, it didn't move. But as he leaned in, he froze. From the other side of the door came the faint, rhythmic sound of breathing. Not wind, not pipes. Breathing. He stumbled back, heart hammering. When he pressed his ear against the door again, the sound had stopped. Later that day, he called the realtor to ask about it. "There's a locked room on the second floor," he said. "Was that part of the deal?" The woman on the line went quiet for a long time before answering. "There shouldn't be any locked doors," she said slowly. "Well, there is. Someone sealed it off." "What's inside?" The pause. Then softly, "If you value your peace, Mr. Hale, don't open that door." The line went dead. By the third night, curiosity gnawed at him until he couldn't resist. He found an old crowbar in the basement, pried open the door, and stepped into the room. The smell hit him: first dust, mold, and something faintly sweet, like rotten fruit. The wallpaper had peeled down in ribbons. An old metal bed sat crooked in the corner, its mattress half-eaten by time. On the nightstand lay a small leather-bound journal. He brushed off the dust and flipped it open. The handwriting was frantic, jagged. "She keeps calling from the walls. She says she can't rest until someone else takes her place. The house doesn't want to be empty." The next page was covered in the same words, written again and again. "Let me out. Let me out. Let me out." A sudden gust of air slammed the door shut behind him. He spun around. The handle was gone. He shouted, kicked, pounded, nothing. And then, slowly, the handle returned, sliding back into place on its own. When he stepped out, something had changed. The hallway wasn't the same. The wallpaper was new, clean. The air smelled faintly of flowers. From downstairs came the sound of laughter, soft, childlike laughter. He crept down the steps, confused, his heart hammering against his ribs. The living room was no longer covered in dust. The lamps were lit. The furniture gleamed like it had just been polished. And in the corner sat a woman in a long black dress, rocking slowly in a chair. 2 children played near the fireplace with old wooden toys. When she turned toward him, Daniel froze. Her eyes were black, hollow sockets. "You finally came home," she whispered. The children stopped laughing. They turned their heads toward him in perfect, unnatural unison. He blinked and suddenly, the room was empty again. The dust, the dark, The silence. Only the old clock ticked on the wall. But in that silence, he could still hear her whisper echoing faintly in his ears. Someone must always stay. He ran for the door. It was nailed shut. The boards looked old, as if they had always been there. He tried the windows sealed. The phone dead. The walls seemed to pulse with each of his breaths. He spun toward the mirror hanging in the hall and froze. His reflection smiled at him. He wasn't smiling. The reflection raised its hand, and he watched in horror as his own arm followed, though he hadn't moved. It beckoned him closer, and he couldn't resist. His body wasn't his anymore. The reflection pressed a palm against the inside of the glass. Daniel's breath fogged the mirror on the other side. And then the reflection pulled. The world twisted, colors bleeding into black. When his vision cleared, he was staring out of the mirror trapped behind the glass. His reflection, now perfectly alive, smiled, turned away, and walked out of sight. Weeks later, a new listing appeared online. A beautiful Victorian home near Ashridge Woods, newly restored, waiting for someone to come home. In one of the listing photos, the living room looked pristine, bright walls, clean floors, and a large mirror over the fireplace. If you looked closely enough, you could just barely see a man's face in the reflection, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. And the caption beneath the photo read simply, "Sold to a new owner."